A quiet dinner, casual conversation, a name tossed out in passing, and suddenly the world flips upside down. One vague phrase, one pause held too long, and what once felt like loyalty begins to split at the seams. For years, he believed in devotion, in shared routines, in the comfort of stability. But where certainty once lived, shadows now gather. And every small gesture starts to look like part of a larger scheme. It begins with a question that shouldn't hurt, but does. A glance that lingers too long. A silence that says too much. And then, the revelation. What he thought was sacred has long been part of someone else's game. She played. Others joined. And it seems everyone knew the rules, except him. But he's not broken. Not yet. Because now it's his move. And he's not just walking away. He's going to set the whole chessboard on fire. Greetings, my dear viewer. Please tell me which city and country you're watching this video from. Maybe you're watching me from a small town or a gigantic metropolis? Write about it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. It will make me very happy. Let's get started. When I spotted Gavin at the bar, he looked uneasy, but greeted me with a strained smile. There you are, man. Why don't you grab a pitcher and come sit in the booth, he said. After settling in, we made small talk for a bit, debating the Reds' chances this season. We figured a third-place finish was probably as far as they'd get. The conversation drifted to a bizarre political scandal. The mayor's chief of staff and the Catholic diocese's treasurer were apparently seeing the same call girl. At least it made for a unique headline. Eventually, the topic turned to Brockton Publishing gossip, where Gavin worked alongside my wife, Samantha. Still, it was obvious Gavin hadn't invited me here just to talk baseball or headlines. There was something heavier on his mind. After another few minutes of idle talk, I leaned forward. All right, Gavin, cut to the chase. What's going on? He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. He cleared his throat, opened his mouth, then closed it again, grappling with the words. At last he started, Aaron, Samantha mentioned, but then faltered, staring at me, searching for the right way to continue. I had no idea where this was going. She told me not to say anything, he finally said. Said it was something you preferred to keep to yourselves. He raised both hands, looking apologetic. So if I'm crossing a line, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I need to make sure you're really okay with all of it. With what? I asked, completely lost. He looked deeply uncomfortable, wetting his lips before answering. The game. You know, the thing you and Samantha do. Where she... His voice faltered as he gestured vaguely, hoping I'd help him fill in the blanks. I have no clue what you're talking about, Gavin, I said coldly. A heavy silence followed. Gavin's face turned pale. I gave him a look that told him to keep talking. After a moment, he finally spoke again. Aaron, are you saying you really don't know about Samantha? That she's been seeing other men? Gavin had joined Brockton Publishing a year earlier after moving on from an entry-level job in New York. At around 28, he was 10 years younger than Samantha and me. He was a broad-shouldered, decent-looking guy who always seemed to have a new date. I'd seen him at company functions with a rotation of attractive women. He'd naturally met Samantha through work, but I genuinely liked him. We bonded over baseball, something Samantha found dull, and we'd caught a few Reds games together last summer. They'd been great fun. We also went to the same gym, and from time to time Samantha and I had him over for dinner. He was easy company. But now, I felt heat rising in my face, anger building fast. I leaned in close and asked, voice low, Gavin, what the hell are you talking about? He leaned back instinctively, putting some space between us. Despite his size, he looked rattled. She told me it was a role-play thing, that you both got off on it, that it was part of a fantasy. I know how it sounds, he added quickly, sensing my reaction. He started to get up, but I grabbed his arm. Don't, I said, forcing myself to stay calm. I'm not going to lose it, and I'm not going to hit you, but you're not leaving until you tell me exactly what Samantha said." He nodded, though reluctantly, and sank back into the booth. "All right," he muttered, "but damn, I really thought you knew." My mind was spinning. "She told me it was something you both agreed on," he explained. "That it turned you on, her being with other guys and then telling you about it. She said the secrecy made it hotter, that none of us were supposed to talk to you about it, but she insisted you were into it, that it excited you." Gavin looked truly shaken. "She asked me not to ever bring it up, but I just couldn't keep going without checking. It all felt too damn weird." Whatever was on my face made him even more nervous. Eventually, I asked the obvious question. "So you slept with her?" He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. "Yeah, twice. Once 2 weekends ago, when you were visiting your mom in Louisville. And again last Tuesday, we both took the day off and went back to my place." The silence that followed was suffocating. A flood of emotions hit me all at once. Shock, fury, shame, confusion. I couldn't understand how this had slipped past me. "And she made you believe I was okay with it?" I asked. "That this was all some kind of sexual game we were playing?" He nodded again, relieved that I hadn't exploded. "She made it sound like you were completely on board, like you two had been doing this for years, that it really fired you up." Gavin paused, trying to recall exactly what she'd said. Her words were, "It really gets Aaron going. He can't keep his hands off me after I tell him." And she smiled when she said it. We sat in silence. Then I spoke, voice firm and cold. "Gavin, just so there's no confusion, I had absolutely no idea. I had always believed I was married to a faithful, loving woman, not someone capable of such profound betrayal. Learning the truth left me staggered, uncertain of how to move forward. My first reaction was disbelief, followed by a nervous chuckle, a feeble attempt to ease the tension. I leaned forward, locking eyes with Gavin. "I need you to do 2 things," I said firmly. "First, don't ever sleep with Samantha again." "Of course not, Aaron," he replied quickly, nodding with conviction. "And second," I added, "she must not find out we talked. If she reaches out again, come up with any excuse you need to. I need space to think, and she can't suspect a thing right now." Gavin nodded again, understanding the gravity. "You have my word," he said sincerely. "And honestly, I wouldn't have touched Samantha if I hadn't truly believed that you were somehow okay with it. You're my friend, man. I feel absolutely awful." His voice broke, his eyes filling with tears. In that moment, I didn't know whether to comfort him or punch him in the face. After Gavin left, I forced myself to stay composed and called the house. Thankfully, Samantha wasn't home yet, so I left a message saying I had to stay late at work and she should go ahead and eat without me. The idea of seeing her that night was unbearable. I wandered through a few blocks and ended up in a quiet diner. I ordered a burger and a salad, though I couldn't taste a thing. The food might as well have been some bizarre combination of cold beet soup and shrimp on white bread. Looking back, I probably looked exactly like the cliché, an oblivious husband devastated by an affair. I had always seen Samantha as the embodiment of devotion, someone who truly loved me. After 14 years together, and with no kids, I thought we had a stable, happy marriage. Our house by Burnett Woods was modest and comfortable. We both had rewarding careers, we traveled, enjoyed time with friends and relatives, and lived a generally content life. Samantha, a petite blonde with a full figure and noticeable curves, wasn't traditionally stunning, but her body turned heads, and she clearly enjoyed the attention. I first noticed her when she openly flirted with me at the party where we met. Over the years, I'd seen her do the same with other men, flirtatious exchanges, suggestive dancing, letting them touch her now and then. I'd never minded. I trusted her completely, convinced she loved me and would always be mine. I couldn't have been more wrong. Our sex life wasn't mind-blowing, but it had always felt good enough. We slept together a few times a week, more on vacations, less during hectic stretches or when family was visiting. It might have been a little predictable, but it never felt lacking. We had our rhythm. I understood what pleased her, and she responded to me in kind. Even if it had become routine, I believed it was mutually satisfying. Clearly, I'd been mistaken. You'd think that after sitting through a meal in that kind of emotional chaos, I'd have been ready to confront her, to draw the line. But I wasn't. It felt like learning someone close had died, like my brain couldn't wrap itself around the reality. I kept grasping at some hope that there'd been a mistake, that Gavin had misunderstood, and that hearing every last detail might somehow make it all make sense. That night, I returned home and somehow kept up appearances. Samantha greeted me warmly, and we chatted about our days while eating some ice cream I had picked up on the way. She snuggled against me in bed, but mercifully didn't try to initiate anything. I don't know what I would have done if she had. When her breathing made it clear that she had fallen asleep, I slowly moved away, trying not to touch her with any part of my body. I had no desire for intimacy. That night, my dreams were a nightmare, an endless string of men having intimacy with Samantha. It was one of the worst nights I've ever been through. The next morning, after she left for work, I called Gavin again and asked to meet over lunch. He hesitated, but I insisted. I needed all the facts. The night before, I'd been too stunned to absorb it fully. I spent the morning at my desk, blankly staring at the wall, then walked to a small Greek place on Calhoun Street where we'd agreed to meet. We ate first, quietly, and then I looked him in the eye. Tell me everything from the beginning. I want to know exactly what happened. There wasn't much more to add. About 3 weeks earlier, Samantha had invited Gavin out for a drink and wasted no time making her interest clear. She told him about a supposed game we played and confessed that she was attracted to him. At first, Gavin didn't respond. He was in shock. The idea of betraying me like that was revolting to him. But over the next few days, she kept pushing. When she told him I'd be in Louisville for the weekend, she proposed meeting at a motel. She even offered to use our home, but that made Gavin too uneasy. In the end, they chose the motel. He didn't go into graphic detail, but it was obvious their encounter had been intense. According to Gavin, Samantha was wild, hungry, aggressive, relentless. Hearing it, I could understand how someone might fall under her spell. Each time they met, they went at it more than once, hands roaming, experimenting with different positions. I clenched my jaw, choosing not to speak. She liked being filthy with me, Gavin said cautiously, watching my face. She said it turned her on to talk dirty while we were together, then come home and tell you all about it. I asked him to recount every single thing Samantha had ever said, how it all started, what she described, and how long it had lasted. Gavin said it had been going on for years. She never gave me a clear timeline, he said, but it was obvious I wasn't the first. She told me she usually had one buddy, that's her word for it, someone she'd sleep with regularly for a few months before dumping him. Then she'd move on, he continued, because you apparently weren't as into hearing about it if it was the same guy for too long. He winced, then added, you liked it when she had someone new. Aaron, I'm really sorry. I know, Gavin. She lied to you too. I waved the apology aside. Forget that for now. Just tell me, did she ever say how it all began? Or who came before you? I don't know exactly how it started, he answered. She threw out a couple names, but the only one I recognized was Alan Mitchell. You mean the city councilman? Yeah, Gavin confirmed. She told me she met him at a book launch in Brockton, some political thing from a few years ago. She also said you'd never actually known any of the men before me. It felt like she did that on purpose, so you wouldn't find out. I pressed further. Did she ever say why she chose you? Gavin's discomfort returned. She said I was too tempting to ignore. He ran a hand down his face, clearly disgusted with himself. Aaron, God. You probably want to hit me. I feel like garbage. My voice was even. I'm not blaming you, Gavin. Most guys wouldn't have passed up Samantha, and she clearly sold you a version of the truth that you wanted to believe. In your place, I might have believed her too. But that wasn't the real issue anymore. The truth was, Samantha had been cheating on me for years, savoring the secrecy, relishing the deception, sure she'd never get caught. I sat there in silence, overwhelmed. Gavin said nothing. My thoughts spiraled. What was I supposed to do now? Pretend nothing had happened? Keep up the charade of being a loving husband? Should I confront her, throw her out, or let her sweat, unsure of what I knew? But one truth had already solidified in my heart. Our marriage was over. Samantha was done. At least if Gavin's story held any weight. No matter how wrecked or furious I felt, I knew I couldn't lash out without confirmation. So I picked up my phone and called Brandon to set up dinner. I left Samantha a voicemail, letting her know I'd be out with Brandon and would be home later. Brandon had been my best friend since college. He was president of Zeta Beta Tau, the fraternity I'd pledged. We'd been tight ever since. He was my best man when I married Samantha, and I'd stood beside him at his wedding to Erica. He'd known Samantha nearly as long as I had, and I knew both he and Erica liked her. So when I told him what I'd learned, his shock mirrored mine. But Brandon, true to who he's always been, was solid. He let me talk without interruption, asked only the occasional question, and stayed quiet while I unraveled. At one point, when I broke down, he just handed me a tissue. No words. He didn't need to say anything. We weren't the kind of friends who said, "I love you," but I never doubted where he stood. He was in my corner, and that mattered more than anything. Once I'd poured everything out, he finally asked, "So, Aaron, do you know what you're going to do?" "Just two things for now," I told him. "First, I need to be sure this is real. I still can't believe it. I thought Samantha loved me. And the second? If it turns out to be true, then she's in for hell. I won't just let it slide. I'm not the forgiving type when it comes to this." He nodded gravely. "I get that. I'd feel the same." Then he asked, "What can Erica and I do to help?" I hesitated. He and Erica were close to Samantha, not like he and I were, but still close. "Would you mind not telling Erica for a little while? Just a few days?" "Of course," he said. "We don't usually keep things from each other, but this is different. I won't say a word until you tell me to." "Thanks, Brandon. Really." I sat down and took a moment to collect my thoughts. The only person from Samantha's circle that came to mind was a man named Alan Mitchell, and I was hoping you could assist me in locating him. He wouldn't recognize me, but there was a good chance he'd be open to speaking with you. Brandon, who had once written political columns for Time and had spent nearly a decade covering local politics for the Cincinnati Enquirer, was well regarded among political circles. "This should be easy enough," he said with confidence, and we started mapping out the best way to approach things. After that, we shifted our discussion to how I should handle myself around Samantha. Brandon urged me to stay calm and act completely normal, to show no signs of suspicion until I had solid proof. I gave a reluctant shrug. "I'm not sure I can manage that, but I'll try." And to my surprise, I almost matched the calm demeanor I'd maintained the night before. Thankfully, once again, Samantha stayed physically close to me, but didn't initiate anything intimate. 2 days later, right at 10:30 in the morning, Brandon and I were seated across from Alan Mitchell in his large, well-appointed office. He welcomed us with a polite professionalism. The two exchanged small talk, catching up, asking about mutual acquaintances, until Mitchell finally asked with a smile, "So, Brandon, what's this visit about?" He stood just over 6 feet tall, probably approaching 50, and carried himself with a kind of poised charisma. He was good-looking, perhaps even striking, in the same curated way many politicians are. He had that polished, magnetic quality, giving you the sense you were the only person in the room. Maybe that's what had drawn Samantha in. But I couldn't be sure. "Alan," This is a personal matter, Brandon began, shifting to a serious tone. And I need your assurance that this stays completely confidential. He motioned toward me. You might know Aaron's wife, Samantha Carter. Mitchell didn't react outwardly, but there was a flash of recognition in his eyes. He answered evenly, I believe we've met, yes, though I'm not sure when or where. I leaned forward. Mr. Mitchell, I'm not here to ruin your life, just as long as you're completely honest with me. I know you've been involved with my wife, and I need the whole truth. He didn't flinch. He took his time, processing what I'd said, carefully measuring his response. When he finally answered, he addressed Brandon rather than me. Is this truly off the record? Absolutely, Brandon replied. This has nothing to do with my job. It's purely personal. No one's going to write anything? My wife's not going to hear about this? None of this leaves this room, Brandon assured him. You're not taking any notes? Nope, nothing written, Brandon confirmed. What Mitchell didn't know was that I had a voice recorder tucked discreetly inside my jacket, silently recording every word. He paused again, then sighed and turned his attention to me. Mr. Carter, I get the sense I wasn't supposed to know what was really going on. Am I correct in thinking you were unaware of my connection with your wife? You're completely right, I replied. He nodded thoughtfully. All right, he said, taking a breath. Yes, I did have an affair with Samantha. It started roughly 2 years ago. We first met at a publishing function, probably a book launch. He leaned in, locking eyes with me. But I want you to understand something. She claimed you were part of it. She described it as some sort of mutual fantasy. Said you enjoyed hearing about her affairs, that it added excitement to your sex life. She made it sound like you were in the loop, pretending not to know, and she was very clear I should never mention it directly to you. She said it was something you both agreed on. And honestly, it was in both our interests to keep things under wraps. I didn't want my wife finding out, and since we didn't move in the same social circles, it was easy to keep it secret. How long were you involved? I asked, keeping my tone flat, almost detached, as though this weren't about the unraveling of my marriage. He thought for a second. 3, maybe 3.5 months. It started in late spring and wrapped up around Labor Day. She told me she enjoyed it while it lasted, but said you preferred hearing about new people after a while. He gave a small, self-deprecating shrug. Honestly, it felt warped, but Samantha is incredibly magnetic. I didn't put up much resistance. Then he caught my look and backtracked. God, I'm sorry. That was a tactless thing to say. It's okay, I told him, and I meant it. I believed him when he said he thought he was part of some odd consensual game, not a secret affair. Just like I told Gavin, if I'd been in his shoes and thought the situation was above board, I might have done the same. Where would you meet? I asked. Anywhere we could be discreet, he answered. Given my visibility, I had to be careful, but I serve on the Public Housing Board, which gave me access to empty units owned by the city. I'd pretend to be doing inspections. We mostly met during weekday lunch hours and occasionally spent entire afternoons together. Did you ever see her in the evenings or on weekends? He hesitated. 2 or 3 times, when she said you were out of town. I lied to my wife and spent the night at your house. His voice wavered. I'm truly sorry, Mr. Carter. I gave a quiet nod, saying nothing. I didn't need to ask for the specifics. I could already imagine enough. Did she ever talk about her past lovers, or mention how long she and I were supposedly involved? He asked. She once mentioned I might have been the 4th or 5th guy, he said. She tried to flatter me. She told me I was the best of them, something along those lines. I figured she was just saying it, but it didn't bother me at the time. We sat in silence for a while before I finally spoke. Is there anything else you think I should know? He shook his head, regret plain on his face. No, I don't think so. I really am sorry. I'm not mad at you, I said calmly. You cheated on your wife. That's your burden, not mine. And when it comes to Samantha, I can't hold it against you for buying into whatever lies she told you. Mitchell looked over at Brandon. This stays between us, right? Brandon nodded, rising from his seat and offering a handshake. You have my word, Alan. I'm sorry you got pulled into this, but my friend deserves to know the truth. Of course, Mitchell said, as he respectfully walked us to the door. At the street corner, Brandon placed a hand on my shoulder. How are you holding up? He asked. I let out a breath. I expected what I heard, but having it confirmed, it's different, like sealing the coffin shut. You want to grab some food, talk it through, maybe go hit some golf balls? No, I'm good, I told him. I think I'll walk around the park until I feel up to eating. Then I'll head back to the office. But hey, would you and Erica be up for dinner tomorrow night? I've started making a few plans, and I want to include you both. Brandon said he'd run it by Erica, and I thanked him again for setting up the meeting with Mitchell. Having even one friend I could truly count on meant the world right now. Later that evening, as I parked in the driveway and stepped out of my car, a bitter realization hit me. Another night of pretending I didn't know who my wife really was. But then I asked myself, why pretend at all? I wasn't ready to confront her outright, but that didn't mean I couldn't start unsettling her. When I walked into the kitchen, Samantha was setting dinner on the plates. She smiled as she turned toward me. Hi, honey. Dinner's just about done, she said, giving me a peck on the lips. I smiled back and took a bottle of wine from the fridge. As we sat down to eat, she filled the silence with stories from her day. But before long, she noticed my quiet demeanor. You okay, Aaron? You're unusually quiet tonight. I'm fine, I said, looking her in the eye. Just feeling a little weighed down. Sometimes people you trust aren't quite who you think they are. Her expression shifted. Is it something at work? I know you've been fed up with Howard's department lately. I don't think this is the right time to get into it, I said, letting the words settle between us. I stared at her for another second before standing to clear our plates. As I moved, I saw her watching me, her unease evident. When I came back with 2 slices of the apple pie she'd picked up earlier, she blushed slightly but offered a warm thank you. We ate dessert in silence. After a while, she awkwardly tried to steer the conversation again, talking about the new neighbors, then about a vacation one of her co-workers was planning. When we were done, she came over and wrapped her arms around me, nuzzling her cheek against mine. Want some coffee? She asked softly. Or maybe something a little sweeter, warmer. Any other night, that invitation would have thrilled me. But not tonight, not after everything I'd learned. I pulled away slightly and answered coolly, No thanks, I've got some paperwork to take care of. Without another word, I left the room, heading to my office and leaving her behind. I didn't know exactly how shaken she was, but I knew she felt it, and that was just fine with me. My original plan was to stay up late and only slip into bed after she was asleep. But by 10 o'clock, fatigue got the better of me. Then it struck me, why should I be the one hiding? I got up and got ready for bed. When I walked into the bedroom, Samantha was already under the covers watching TV. I undressed, brushed my teeth, and got into bed without saying anything. She quickly turned off the television, leaving only the soft light from the bedside lamp. She rolled toward me. I noticed she'd put on a nightgown that was shorter and far more revealing than usual, not something she wore without a purpose. She leaned in gently and whispered, Do you want a little love tonight, Aaron? I turned away, offering her my back. No, I said evenly. Not tonight. Good night. Then I reached over and switched off the lamp. You should understand, refusing intimacy from Samantha was something I'd never done before. It was unheard of for me. Throughout our marriage, there were perhaps 4 or 5 instances when I declined Samantha's advances, always with a clear reason, like a pounding headache or an urgent work deadline. I never left her wondering. I always explained myself. That kind of change in behavior should have been a glaring warning sign, but she didn't flinch. She never asked if I was upset or if something was wrong. She said nothing, clearly avoiding the uncomfortable truth she likely suspected. Samantha typically drifts off minutes after switching off the lights. I usually take a bit longer, but that night was different. 30 minutes later, she was still awake, lying silently beside me. I lay there, a grim smile curling in the dark. I was wide awake too. My mind kept circling back to all the times we'd made love, moments I once considered sacred, now tainted by the suspicion that I'd unknowingly followed someone else's footsteps. I had once felt sure that I was her only lover, embracing her with that belief. Now it felt like I was merely one in a series. Sleep never came. I lay there for hours, burning with fury. At dawn, I got up, showered quickly, poured a cup of coffee, and left for work without a single word to Samantha. I was already thinking ahead. At my desk, I scribbled a note to my supervisor asking for a private meeting as soon as he arrived. Then I began drafting a checklist: bank accounts, credit cards, moving services, practical steps toward an exit. At 8:15, Logan poked his head into my office. "Morning, Aaron. You wanted to see me?" "Yeah, thanks, Logan." "Can we speak in private?" I said, standing to shut the door behind him. I'd known Logan Brooks for close to 10 years. He was more than a coworker. He was someone I genuinely trusted. I decided to be honest with him. "I need this kept absolutely between us," I said. "Something personal has come up." I explained that I had uncovered Samantha's infidelity and that I intended to leave her as soon as possible. I also asked if he still had the contact info for the recruiter who'd reached out about me the year before. Back then, I hadn't been interested. I was settled. Logan looked stunned, blurting out a few shocked phrases, including a heavy "Jesus," but quickly pulled himself together and assured me I had his full support. By 10:15, I was on the phone with that same recruiter. Half an hour later, I had faxed him my updated resume. By mid-afternoon, at 2:25, we were speaking again, reviewing 3 potential opportunities. The most compelling offer came from a nonprofit in Chicago looking for a fundraising director. The job mirrored what I was doing now, but it involved a bigger team, a wider reach, and a salary bump of at least 20%. They had struggled to fill the position and were eager to act fast. I told the recruiter I was interested and available for an interview whenever they needed me. Just before 6 p.m., as I was getting ready to leave, my phone rang. A booming voice introduced himself. "Mr. Carter? Thomas Randall here, Global Resources Chicago. I hear you're interested in our development position." We ended up talking for almost 30 minutes. The conversation went so well that by the end, Thomas invited me to meet the board in person. We scheduled the interview for 2 days later. I accepted on the spot. That evening, I had dinner with Brandon and Erica. It was both comforting and painful. It reminded me that I had 2 steadfast friends, but also forced me to recount everything, bringing the betrayal back to life. Erica listened closely, her expression a mix of sadness and seething rage. "That bitch," she whispered through clenched teeth. "Unreal." Seeing how wrecked I was, her tone softened. "I'm sorry, Aaron," she said, taking my hand. "What can we do to help?" "Just be here," I said, wiping a few tears away. "I'll make it through. It just feels unbearable right now, but knowing I've got you both, it makes a difference." Brandon gave my shoulder a firm, reassuring squeeze. They both promised their support. After dinner, I laid out my plan: get out of town, take the new job, and disappear from Samantha's life entirely. I wasn't chasing revenge. I didn't want a scene. I wanted her to wake up and find everything gone, and realize she'd lost me for good. I explained that the Chicago offer looked promising and that I'd likely take it. I told them I intended to vanish quietly, leaving no way for Samantha to track me down. I couldn't hide forever, but I planned to ask the nonprofit to hold off on any public announcement for a month. With a new number, a new email, and Logan's cooperation at the office, I believed I could stay off her radar long enough to let the fear sink in. When it all goes down, I told them, she'll come to you first. I need you to cover for me. Say you don't know anything. Erica gave a sharp, bitter smile. And to think I once counted her among my closest friends. Don't worry, Aaron, we'll handle it. Honestly, I'm looking forward to telling her off. She hesitated, then gave a dry laugh. She's nothing but a selfish liar. And just so I'm clear, does this mean I can count on you to be faithful to me now, sweetheart? Brandon made a joke that earned him a light-hearted smack on the arm. Right. And don't think you can hide anything from me, big guy, unless you're ready to kiss your pride goodbye, she said, grinning. Laughter erupted around the table, and the dinner gradually transformed into a relaxed, cheerful evening full of warmth and closeness. For a short time, I was able to forget the rage and heartbreak that had been weighing on me for days. By the time I walked through the front door, it was already quite late. The lights in the bedroom were off, but Samantha was still awake. She had sent a few upbeat and cheerful emails throughout the day, and I'd replied with nothing more than a brief message saying I'd be home late after dinner. I didn't mention who I'd be dining with. Hi, sweetheart, she murmured from the darkness, her voice drowsy and calm. That single moment struck me hard, reminding me just how deeply I still desired her and how beautiful she remained in my eyes. If only this nightmare could somehow be erased. If only I could still believe she was the devoted, loving woman I used to fall asleep beside without question. How was dinner? I missed you, she asked softly. It was fine, I said, keeping my tone flat. Brandon and Erica joined me. I added, it's nice to have people you can really count on. She shifted slightly in bed, hesitating. But why? She never finished her thought. Just like the night before, fear held her back, afraid that any question might lead to a conversation she wasn't ready to face. So, she remained quiet. I cursed inwardly. Rather than challenge me, she just watched silently as I got ready for bed. When I finally climbed in beside her, she turned toward me and gently embraced me. You didn't give me any love last night, baby, she whispered teasingly, pressing her chest against me. Think I might get lucky tonight? I gave a bitter little chuckle. I'm sorry, Samantha, I replied as I turned away. My mind still wrapped up in that issue I mentioned. I'm just not feeling it tonight. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. After a pause, she responded softly, That's okay, sweetheart. I get it. But I do hope we'll make love again soon. I really miss you. Her fingers traced slowly along my arm and over my shoulder before she rolled back to her side of the bed. Once again, she struggled to fall asleep, and once again, I stayed awake even longer. The next several days passed quickly and without much clarity. My interview in Chicago with the Global Resources Chicago went extremely well, and I accepted their job offer. My start date was set for 10 days later. I called Logan right away, and to his credit, he took the news graciously, despite the short notice. We arranged for me to stay on in a limited consulting role for about a month to help bring my successor up to speed. I owed Logan a great deal, and I made it clear that I wouldn't leave him hanging. 4 days after that, I was back in Chicago, this time to secure a new place to live. With help from a real estate agent that Thomas Randall had recommended, I found a nice 2-bedroom apartment close to my new office. I signed the lease immediately, then headed to a furniture store and picked out everything I'd need for the apartment. The building's manager agreed to handle the incoming deliveries, so everything would be in place when I moved in. I even looped in Audrey Sinclair, the woman who'd soon be my assistant, to help with buying sheets, towels, and some basic kitchen necessities. Audrey happily agreed, especially after I promised her dinner at one of the top restaurants in Chicago. By the time I returned to Cincinnati, the major pieces had fallen into place. All that remained was cleaning out my university office, packing up my clothes, and finalizing the financial split from Samantha. By Friday, I had taken care of everything, except packing. Samantha didn't question my out-of-town travel since work-related trips were normal for me. but she couldn't ignore the emotional distance, and it clearly unnerved her. I took some quiet satisfaction in watching her try to piece it all together. She was too afraid to dig for the truth, knowing that asking the wrong question might tip me off to what she'd done. So instead, she poured on the charm, sweet, doting, affectionate, while I responded with cold, deliberate detachment. The contrast shook her, and that was exactly what I wanted. One afternoon, Erica called me at the office, her voice full of smug delight. She told me Samantha had called her, desperate to understand what was going on with me. I savored every minute of it, Erica said. Samantha had told her that I was being distant, cold, withdrawn, physically unresponsive, and she couldn't figure out why. Erica asked her directly, "Well, did something happen? Did you do anything that might have upset him?" Samantha sighed and claimed she had no idea. Then Erica pushed again. "Did you at least ask him outright what's wrong?" Samantha admitted that she hadn't. She didn't want to pressure me. She was hoping I'd talk when I was ready. It was obvious what she was really afraid of. This was her subtle way of trying to extract answers from Erica without exposing any of her own secrets. I told Erica to keep me informed and let her know that I was ready to move. Monday would be the day. That weekend, I kept up the act. The bitterness I felt toward Samantha hadn't faded in the slightest, and I fully intended to make the last 2 days we spent together miserable for her. I barely said a word to her. Anytime she made an effort to be kind or loving, I met her with cold indifference. When she suggested going for a walk on Saturday, "It's such a beautiful day, sweetheart," I just stared at her and said bluntly, "I don't feel like it." When she suggested several ways we might spend our Saturday night, going out to dinner, seeing a movie, or meeting friends, I told her I'd rather stay home and unwind in front of the TV. She joined me on the couch, and I waited until only about 10 minutes remained in the show before suddenly standing up. "Just remembered, I've got a couple of reports to finish," I said, and walked straight into my office. I stayed up long into the night, only crawling into bed once I was sure Samantha had already fallen asleep. The next morning, I woke to her curled up beside me, softly kissing my neck, her hand drifting with intent to arouse. As I opened my eyes, she beamed at me and said, "Great, you're awake. Baby wants to play." She climbed on top of me and leaned in for a kiss, but I pushed gently on her shoulders, keeping her back. "Samantha, don't," I said. "I don't push you for sex when you're not up for it. I'd appreciate the same respect." I slipped out from beneath her and stood, reaching for my robe. Her face fell. "Sweetheart," she murmured. "It's been, 2 weeks? Did I do something? Are you angry with me?" It was the first time she'd even come close to confronting my odd behavior, and it came from a place of raw concern. "I don't know, Samantha. You tell me," I said flatly. "Anything you can think of that might explain why I'd be upset?" My tone was calm, but cold as ice. She didn't respond, just stared down at the bed. Finally, she whispered, "No, honey. Nothing comes to mind." Her eyes met mine, searching, silently pleading, but too frightened to probe deeper. "Then I guess that's all there is to say," I replied coolly, and headed to the kitchen to start the coffee. Whatever impact our exchange had on her, it was enough to keep her distant the rest of the day. Still, I heard her on the phone a few times, probably talking to a friend, or maybe a lover, trying to figure out how to deal with me. Later, while she was out running errands, I called Gavin. I asked if he'd heard from Samantha lately. He said she'd approached him at the office 2 days earlier, asking if he'd seen me recently. She said I'd been acting distant, preoccupied, but didn't offer any explanation. "So I told her we weren't really in contact," Gavin said. "It just seemed like the safest thing to do." Then he mentioned that she told him she wanted to keep their game going, but figured she should wait until she figured out what was bothering me. "I acted disappointed," he added, but of course I agreed. I thanked him. "The truth's about to come out anyway," I said. "Just make sure you don't give her any hints." Gavin promised again to keep everything between us, and we ended the call. On Monday morning, after breakfast, Samantha stepped back into the bedroom to finish getting ready for work. She looked surprised to see me still in sweatpants and sneakers. "You're not going in today?" "No. Took the day off. Got a few things I need to deal with." She hesitated, then said, her voice low and hesitant, "Well, if you're not in a rush, maybe we could, you know, make love?" She smiled gently. "I wouldn't mind being a little late." I looked at her, deliberately summoning the image of her in bed with Alan Mitchell, or whoever else she'd chosen. This was the woman I had poured my life into. That alone was enough. "No," I said. "I don't think so." Without another word or meeting her eyes, I walked out. I went down to the basement to dig out my luggage and waited there until I heard her car leave the driveway. By 11, I had packed everything I intended to take, 3 suitcases, plus boxes filled with books and CDs. I called a cab. While it waited, I mailed the boxes to my new place in Chicago. Then it drove me to the airport. By 7:30 that evening, I was unpacking at my new apartment. Later, I walked to a nearby pizza joint and ordered a beer and a slice. I raised my glass with a grim expression. A toast to the first day of a new life. A life without Samantha. And one last detail. Before I left the house, I scribbled a note and left it on the kitchen table. I placed my wedding ring and cell phone right on top of it. The note read, "I know about your game." Now here's mine. It's called "Goodbye to the Cheating Bitch." My first week at the new job was a blur, demanding and exhausting, which was exactly what I needed. It helped keep my mind off Samantha. Not that I ever thought of going back. That chapter was over, but each time her face drifted into my thoughts, anger surged. I couldn't help but grudgingly respect how masterfully she'd managed her betrayal. Still, that didn't lessen how much I hated her. And yet, beneath the fury, I still missed her. I had loved her with everything I had, for years. That kind of love doesn't vanish overnight. It just mutates. Love tangled with hate, swirling together like clothes in a washing machine. Thankfully, global resources kept me too swamped to dwell on any of it for long. By the time Friday evening arrived, I felt a wave of relief, finally able to relax at home, catch part of a baseball game on TV, and head to bed early. But the weekend turned out to be far from easy. I was still new to Chicago and didn't really know anyone apart from a few coworkers. On top of that, I had to face the uncomfortable truth that I was essentially single again, not legally, but in every way that mattered emotionally. The thought of starting over, forming new friendships, and eventually trying to meet someone new was nothing short of exhausting. The one comforting moment came Sunday, during a phone call with Brandon and Erica. They checked in to see how I was managing and offered words of support. I gave them my updated phone number and address, once more swearing them to secrecy. Erica, though, was practically brimming with anticipation, eager to share her latest encounter with Samantha. That Monday evening, she called while I was eating dinner, nearly hysterical. She was crying so hard it was difficult to understand her at first, but eventually, her message came through clearly. "He's gone. Aaron's gone," she kept sobbing. I could hear the anguish in her voice and told her I'd come right over. When I arrived at her place, the sight of her was jarring. She looked like she'd completely fallen apart. Her hair was a mess, makeup smeared with tears, and she could barely form a sentence. I made her a drink, sat down, and played the part of the sympathetic friend. And to be honest, I found myself enjoying it. She poured everything out, how she had come home from work only to find you had left, with your engagement ring sitting conspicuously on the table. I asked if you had left a note or given any kind of explanation. Then, with a hint of vengeful satisfaction in her voice, Erica told me Samantha had completely broken down. Between gasps and sobs, she confessed, "Oh, Erica, I cheated on him." I acted as though I couldn't believe it. I think my exact response was, "No, Samantha, you didn't." I staged the perfect performance, storming around the kitchen, pretending to be furious and hurt, glaring at her like I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. She looked petrified, drowning in shame. Eventually, I told her, "I'm sorry, Samantha, but I can't be here right now. I love both of you, and I never imagined you could do something like this to Aaron. He's the best man I know." Then I added, "I'll call you in a few days when I've had time to cool down," and walked out, leaving her weeping in the kitchen. Even over the phone, I could hear Erica's satisfaction as she told the story. I had no doubt Samantha would become frantic trying to reach me, and I secretly hoped the inability to do so would torment her. Still, the fact that I missed her so much only added fuel to the fire. How could the woman I trusted completely do this to me? Why was she allowed to destroy everything and walk away from it? Over the following 2 weeks, I stayed closely connected to Brandon and Erica. They became my support system, people I could confide in about work, the isolation, and the hollowness I felt every day. They listened without judgment and continued to reassure me that things would eventually get better. They were genuinely there for me. Meanwhile, Samantha was calling them constantly, desperate for any clue about where I'd gone. They told me she was spiraling, absolutely frantic. I also checked in with Logan, who told me Samantha had shown up at his place the day after I left. When she found out I had quit my job and disappeared without leaving contact information, she nearly collapsed. 3 weeks after settling into Chicago, I flew back to Cincinnati for the weekend. Brandon and Erica had invited me, and it turned out to be just what I needed, a short break to breathe and shake off some of the emotional weight I'd been carrying. During dinner on Saturday, Erica shared the latest update about Samantha. "She stopped by Thursday," she said, "still obsessed with finding you, still a total wreck." "She's actually considering hiring a private investigator," Erica added. "She thinks that if she could just talk to you face to face, she might be able to explain, maybe even make you forgive her." I raised an eyebrow. "Forgive her? That's ambitious. Still, I'd like to know. What's she telling people? What's her version of the events?" Erica leaned forward, visibly amused. I asked her straight out, "Samantha, you've been crying for 3 weeks about losing Aaron. We've been friends a long time. Isn't it time you tell me what really happened? Just how bad was it?" "And did she answer?" I asked. "Tell me everything." That night I learned more about Samantha than I ever wanted to know. Erica began with the story of Samantha's first affair, a smooth-talking Brit she'd met at a book launch. They talked throughout the event, and by the end, he'd asked her to join him for drinks. Samantha said she couldn't because she was married, but instead of walking away, she asked which hotel he was staying in and told him she'd meet him at the bar later. They met, shared drinks, and eventually went up to his room, where they slept together. I sat quietly, staring out the window. I had already known for years that she had been unfaithful, but learning this had been the first time hit me hard. I asked Erica if Samantha had said anything about why she did it. "She looked completely ashamed," Erica replied. "She told me I was bored. I know that's a terrible excuse, but it's the truth. Aaron and I had a good life, and the intimacy was fine, but it was always the same, predictable, nothing exciting. Then this gorgeous guy with an incredible accent came along, and I just thought, why not? It would be something different." And then Erica finished with, "She told me the intimacy was fun, just fun." It hadn't been some profound awakening, just the thrill of sleeping with someone new after so many years. The following week, she began initiating intimacy with you more frequently, and the encounters were better than usual. In her mind, she'd found the ideal setup, occasional, low-profile affairs that would breathe new life into your bedroom at home. In her view, everyone benefited. Can you believe that nonsense? Over the next hour or so, Erica continued filling in the gaps. Samantha had eventually settled into a routine, finding a new man every few months. Initially, the encounters were one-time flings, but things changed when she met her 5th or 6th partner, someone she found exceptional in bed. She wanted to keep seeing him. Their affair carried on for 3 months, only ending when he proposed to the woman he was dating. According to Erica, Samantha realized that after the initial hookup, the passion only intensified, especially as they learned how to please each other better. That's when she came up with a new method. Short-lived affairs, 6, maybe 10, even 20 times with the same man, just long enough for the novelty to wear off. I asked what she meant by the game. Erica explained that it started when one of the men began developing real feelings for Samantha. She grew concerned that someone might get too attached and end up spilling everything to me. So she hatched a plan, convinced them that I already knew and approved of the arrangement. That way, they'd believe she was never going to leave me and wouldn't consider her vulnerable to blackmail. Samantha thought this plan was brilliant. Erica said she even chuckled as she described it. Brandon handed me another beer, and I just sat there, drinking in silence, my thoughts unraveling. Nothing Erica said truly shocked me. It all lined up with what I'd already suspected, but hearing it spoken aloud cut deeply. The sheer depth of betrayal, the realization that I'd so badly misjudged the woman I loved more than anyone else, was suffocating. How could I have been so utterly blind? It all boiled down to boredom, for God's sake. But don't most married couples hit rough patches? Don't we all go through phases where things feel a bit stale? There are ways to address that. Open, honest conversations with your partner, exploring new things together, traveling, even experimenting in bed. But cheating? That's not the answer. I can't recall a time when I felt bored with her. Sure, sometimes things felt repetitive, but I still wanted her, and I would have tried anything new if she'd just asked. Instead, Samantha decided to inject excitement into her sex life, not ours. That Sunday, while I was packing for my flight to Chicago, Brandon asked what my plan was. Was I going to vanish and leave her to wonder? Or was I preparing to confront her and put a definitive end to it? I told him I wasn't sure yet. Maybe I'd do both, let her stew for a while, and when she finally found me, I'd deliver a blow she'd never see coming. I spelled out the whole thing, and Brandon laughed. Sounds like a solid plan, Aaron. Just wish I could stick around to see it. To my surprise, it was several weeks before Samantha managed to track me down. Brandon told me during a phone call that she'd apparently hired someone to locate me. That must have been how she found out where I'd gone. But honestly, I couldn't be bothered to care. Then one Thursday evening, I came home from work to a long, rambling voicemail from her. Thank God I found you, baby. I'm so sorry. I love you more than anything. Please let me explain. I miss you. I'll do anything to fix this. You're the only man I've ever truly loved. It went on like that, for a full 5 minutes, and every word was exactly what I expected. Not one sentence eased my anger. Did she think she could repeatedly betray her husband for years and just talk her way out of it? Say, oops, my bad, and expect everything to go back to normal? No way, Samantha. That's not how this story ends. It was time to move to the final stage. I knew she'd keep calling, keep trying to reach me. Ignoring her wouldn't work forever. So the next day, I invited Audrey, my assistant, out for a long lunch. Over the past few months, Audrey had become someone I genuinely trusted. She already knew much of the painful story behind my sudden move to Global Resources. She was in her 40s, married with 3 kids, incredibly sharp, and hands down the best assistant I'd ever had. I explained what I planned to do about Samantha, and Audrey burst out laughing. "Oh, Aaron, I love it," she said, throwing her head back. "Honestly, I don't think you could have come up with a better plan." She laughed again, clearly entertained. "But you're going to need help with that last part." "I'm not exactly," I began. "Leave it to me," she cut in. "I've got a few ideas. Just hold off on doing anything until I get back to you in a couple of days." I gave her a skeptical look. "You're serious?" She nodded, grinning. "Completely." "Well, all right," I said, still a little unsure. "Not exactly what they hired you for, though." We both cracked up at that. Samantha continued to call, almost every other day for the next 2 weeks. Her messages were getting briefer, but the content never changed. Nothing she said moved me to respond, much less consider forgiving her or letting her back into my life. That Monday, as I was gathering my things at the office, Audrey walked over to my desk. "It's all set," she announced. "I found someone ideal for you. Just give me the day and time, and I'll send her your address." I looked at her skeptically. Am I actually going to like this person? And seriously, Audrey, who is she, and how on earth did you get her to agree to this? She gave me a mischievous smile. Let's just say she's very enthusiastic. Once I explained your situation, she didn't hesitate. She was excited to help. She's really that eager? She was practically vibrating, Audrey said with a grin. But no, I'm not telling you who she is. You'll just have to trust me, boss. You're going to be impressed. The next day, I left Samantha a message. It's me. If you still want to give me your side of the story, this is your one chance. Saturday at 1 o'clock at my apartment in Chicago. Don't come early, don't be late. You'll have exactly 60 minutes. Here's the address. Call back to confirm. Later that evening, I ignored the phone when it rang and listened to Samantha's voicemail instead. Her voice was filled with emotion. Oh my God. Thank you, baby. Thank you so much. I love you. I'll be there on Saturday, I promise. Thank you for giving me this chance. I know I can help you see things clearly. I'm so sorry for everything. I want to spend the rest of my life, 60 years if I can, making this right. On Wednesday, I followed up with Audrey. It's set for 1 o'clock Saturday. Can you make sure your mystery woman shows up no later than noon? Absolutely, she replied. But you have to promise to call me afterward and tell me everything. That's the deal. Later, I got a call from Erica. She had an update. Samantha was still riding a wave of hope. Aaron, I swear, she has no clue. She's convinced she can win you back. She really thinks that if she cries and says she's sorry, you'll just melt and take her back. Then her tone shifted, more thoughtful now. I honestly can't believe I didn't see it sooner. We've been friends for almost 15 years. We talked about everything. Our husbands, our work, our families. And now, after seeing what she's capable of, how selfish and callous she can be, even if she doesn't fully get it, it's like I'm meeting a stranger. I feel like a fool. I gave a dry laugh. Trust me, Erica, I get it. I was married to her. What this shows is that people like us, you, me, Brandon, people who care deeply and believe in others, we assume everyone else has the same heart. But Samantha doesn't. Saturday morning, I spent a couple of hours cleaning my apartment from top to bottom. I wanted the place to feel fresh and welcoming, like the home of someone confident and moving on, not someone wounded by betrayal. I tossed old newspapers, arranged my books neatly, scrubbed every surface, and even set out a vase of fresh flowers on the dining table. A little after noon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, unsure of what I'd see. Hey, came the greeting. Claire? I blinked in confusion. Wait, what? She gave a light laugh. Maybe I should have led with, surprise, Aaron. Claire Harlow, she worked as a program specialist at Global Resources, had been one of the first people I met after joining the company. She looked to be in her early 30s, about 8 years younger than me, and she was absolutely stunning. Petite and graceful, with deep black hair and captivating green eyes, she had a poised charm mixed with a relaxed warmth that instantly put people at ease. Honestly, she was one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen. Naturally, I'd noticed how gorgeous she was when we first met, but back then, I was trying to stay afloat, dealing with Samantha's betrayal, adjusting to a new job in an unfamiliar city, and juggling a flood of new names and faces. Even so, she had crossed my mind often. We ran into each other a few times each week, in hallways and meetings, and she was always friendly and upbeat. I had a sense she liked me, but I chalked it up to her open personality. I never saw a wedding ring, but someone like Claire? I couldn't imagine she wasn't dating someone. So I'd forced myself to view her only as a colleague, someone I quietly admired from a distance. It never occurred to me to ask Audrey if she was single. But now, here she was, glancing around my apartment with approval. I was too shocked to fully absorb what was happening. "Audrey told you everything? About Samantha coming over today?" I finally asked. Her smile widened. "She told me everything. I came ready," she said, raising the shopping bag she'd brought with her. "But you—" I trailed off, still stunned. I was still reeling. "Do you truly grasp what you're stepping into?" I asked, my voice uncertain. Claire let out a gentle laugh and caressed my cheek with the back of her hand. "I do, Aaron, completely. Audrey told me everything, what you uncovered about your wife and the situation you're now facing." Her tone shifted, becoming more serious. "Something very similar happened to me with my ex-fiancée about a year ago. I understand exactly what you're going through." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning every word. "I had no idea." "It's okay," she replied softly. "It's not fresh anymore. I've made my peace with it. But when it happened, it nearly destroyed me. Honestly, I'd give anything to throw it back in his face the way you're about to do with Samantha." She chuckled again before asking, "So, what's the plan?" I suggested we begin with lunch. We spent about half an hour at my kitchen table, eating sandwiches and easing into conversation. I had already found Claire strikingly beautiful, but now I saw how thoughtful, witty, and compassionate she was. A part of me even started to consider whether I should ask her out properly someday. But that wasn't today's concern. At 12:45, I looked across the table and said, "If you're still sure, I think it's time to move to the bedroom." Claire's smile lit up her face. "I'm ready." We reviewed the final details, then she leaned in to kiss my cheek. "This is going to hurt, Aaron," she murmured. "You've shared your life with her for a long time. This won't be easy, but I promise, I'll give it my all." And with that, she turned and made her way to the bedroom, leaving the door ajar. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, quietly smiling as I cleared the plates. Somehow, the fact that Claire, not some stranger, was helping me carry out this plan made it all feel more bearable. At exactly 12:58, the doorbell rang. I took a breath to steady myself. Samantha was on the other side, trying to muster a smile, but the tension in her eyes gave her away. She had dressed in clothes she knew I liked, put on makeup, and even appeared to have gotten a fresh haircut. "Hi, Aaron," she said in a small voice, moving toward me as if she expected a hug. I took a step back and motioned for her to come inside. "Hey, Samantha," I said coolly. "Can I get you something to drink?" In the kitchen, I busied myself with 2 sodas, hoping to hide how furiously my heart was racing. A surge of emotions was crashing through me: grief, fury, love, bitterness. I had to keep control. When we sat down, Samantha leaned forward, reaching for my hands, but I didn't offer them. I kept mine folded in front of me. "You're here now, Samantha," I said, "so I'll listen, even though I don't think you deserve that." She inhaled shakily. "Aaron, I'm so sorry. I made an awful mistake. I was selfish, blind. I hurt you terribly and I—" "That's enough," I said firmly, raising a hand. "I don't want to hear one more apology. Don't say you love me. Don't try to claim it meant nothing. Don't say it was just sex or had nothing to do with me. Don't insult my intelligence. You cheated on me, Samantha, over and over, for years, with multiple men. Am I wrong?" She looked stunned by the heat in my voice, but she slowly nodded. "But baby, do you remember what we promised each other at the altar?" I interrupted again. "Do you remember the vow to forsake all others?" She gave another nod, her face pale. Clearly, she hadn't expected a confrontation this raw. I didn't understand why. What did she think this would be? A calm discussion? "We vowed to be loyal for life, and somewhere along the line, you decided that didn't matter anymore. You went out and slept with whoever you pleased. So tell me, how many were there?" "I don't know, Aaron. Maybe 10? Or was it 20? 50? She looked like she could barely process the questions. Maybe around 20? She whispered. And how often did it happen? I pressed. How many times did you break your vows? I'm not sure, she murmured, eyes glistening. Try, I said coldly. Take your time, I'm not going anywhere. After several seconds, she mumbled, probably a couple hundred. She couldn't meet my eyes anymore. She kept staring down, her shame written all over her face. All right, I said. Let's round it off. 200. Now tell me how many of those times happened here. In our home. In our bed. Barely audible, she said. Maybe 30? A crushing silence fell between us. Well, I said quietly, now that the truth is out there, now that we've laid bare the scale of your betrayal, go ahead. Tell me why I'm supposed to listen to a word you say. I love you, Aaron, she said, her voice cracking as tears streamed freely down her cheeks. You're the only man I've ever truly loved. Her words came between sobs, each one wrapped in desperation. You mean the world to me. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak, let the emotions pour out of her unchecked. She pleaded for me to understand, to accept her love, even as she admitted to acting out of selfishness and causing me deep pain. She kept saying she never meant for me to find out, that she never intended to hurt me. As if claiming ignorance made the betrayal less real. But none of it caught me off guard. Everything she said hit with dull precision, words that meant exactly nothing. All I could hear was the frantic voice of a woman too consumed by herself to grasp the damage she'd done. Eventually, her voice faded into meaningless noise. My mind wandered, overtaken by the memory of the years I had poured into our life together, of the dreams I once had about growing old side by side. The anger that had taken root inside me now churned with grief. It all felt like such a bitter, senseless waste, and I understood right then that I would never get a real explanation. Even she seemed to lack one. There wasn't a single reason she could give that didn't sound empty, just pure, ice-cold selfishness masquerading as regret. I glanced at the kitchen clock. It read 2:05 a.m., and I wasn't sure how much longer I could sit there, or why I should. I think we're done here, Samantha, I said, raising my voice enough to cut through the haze. There's nothing left to talk about. She dissolved again into sobs. Aaron, please, you don't mean that. Then a noise came from the hallway behind me, drawing both our eyes. A sultry voice floated out, low and unmistakably teasing. Baby, you said you'd be done with her an hour ago. Are you coming back to bed? There, leaning against the bedroom doorframe, stood Claire. She looked impossibly alluring, her lipstick slightly smeared, hair tousled with just the right imperfection. Her sheer, pale blue nightgown clung to her like liquid silk, making her look like a living sculpture carved by gods. She was, without question, the most intoxicating sight I'd ever seen. I turned back toward Samantha. She was paralyzed in place, shrinking before my eyes. Her face had gone pale as ash. She looked like something inside her had just broken. Her head moved in slow disbelief, whispering, No. No. Like she was trying to will the moment out of existence. I stood. She's right, Samantha, I said evenly. I told you I'd give you an hour. And now, as you can see, I've got other things to attend to. In fact, I'll be busy again shortly. I gave her a cold smile as she staggered to her feet, visibly shaken. Aaron, she tried, but the words caught in her throat. Her gaze flicked to Claire, then back to me. She looked lost, stricken. I didn't realize you two. She couldn't finish. Her voice died. Tears streaked down her face. She turned silently, crossed the room, and slipped out the front door. I followed, closing it quietly behind her. Then I turned back to Claire. You are, I said, still dazed, the most stunning woman I've ever seen. She blushed and looked down slightly. Thank you, Aaron, she said with a soft smile. Then, with a small gesture toward her nightgown, she added. I guess this little number did the trick. I noticed a gleam in her eyes, something tender, maybe even emotional. You destroyed her, I said, my voice low. She never saw it coming. Thank you. I stared at her, stunned by everything that had just happened. Samantha no longer existed in my thoughts. I needed it too, Claire whispered. Part of me felt like I was doing it for Henry, my ex. I'm glad, I replied. And I can't stop staring at you. Should I go put something else on? She asked with a playful tilt of her head. I didn't answer right away, and she noticed. Instead, she stepped closer and gave me a sly grin. Actually, I was hoping you'd help me take this off. Her arms slid around my neck as she leaned in. It can be tricky. She laughed softly at the stunned expression on my face. I mean it, Aaron, she whispered. This feels right. Like this is exactly where we're supposed to be. Then she kissed me, light and delicate, and I felt tears building in my eyes. Being with Claire that night felt almost holy, like something outside of time. We were gentle with each other, slow and reverent. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about healing. It was something deeper, two broken people sharing something unspoken. Her skin was like poetry, every touch a verse. Afterward, we lay entwined, whispering and holding one another. There was no urgency, just warmth, a sense of finally being seen. When she finally nestled into me and began drifting off, the feeling was almost too perfect to describe. I didn't say a word. I didn't want to break the silence with anything, even gratitude. We stayed like that for a while. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt complete, alive, and I prayed she felt it too. About half an hour later, she stirred and murmured that it was time for her to leave. She rose with grace, her confidence undimmed. I tried to sit up, but she gently guided me back down. Just stay put, Aaron. Rest. She slipped into the bathroom to change. When she emerged, fully dressed and composed, she came to sit beside me on the bed. Leaning in, she kissed me once more, softly, deliberately. If you're wondering, she said with a faint smile, none of this was planned. I didn't expect it either. Hearing that conversation between you two made something inside me click. I realized I genuinely wanted this. It felt right, like something I'd been missing. I questioned if it had only been a kiss, or maybe she had gently explained it was just a one-time thing. I didn't know what to say at first. My thoughts were all tangled. Eventually I managed, "Thank you, Claire. What you did was the kindest, most selfless and beautiful thing anyone's ever done for me." She gave me a soft smile and replied, "It wasn't just for you, Aaron. I needed it too. You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing, more than just a confidence boost." Then she kissed me again, whispered, "Don't get up," and quietly slipped out the door. I slept for a few hours, completely worn out, from the emotional crash with Samantha and the deep, meaningful night I had shared with Claire. There was no doubt in my mind. It had been genuine lovemaking, not some shallow act of retaliation or empty comfort. Waking up around 5 in the morning, I drifted around the apartment, picking things up while trying to process everything. Without hesitating long enough to second-guess myself, I reached for my phone, found Claire's contact, and hit call. "Hey, it's Aaron," I said, suddenly feeling awkward. "Hi, Aaron," she answered, her voice bright with a smile. "I hope things didn't feel too strange last night," I said in a rush. "You were amazing, so thoughtful, so generous, and unbelievably sexy. I just wanted to say thank you again. You're really something special." "It didn't feel strange at all," she said. "Actually, it was kind of incredible. I'm not usually that spontaneous, though. I don't just sleep with someone on impulse." "I never assumed you did," I assured her. "To me, it felt like something rare, something that really meant something," I added, even though I wasn't sure I sounded convinced. "Tell you what, I said, shifting forward. What if we go out for dinner tonight? I haven't explored Chicago's food scene much yet, and I'd love to take you somewhere nice. She paused for a few moments, and I held my breath, waiting. That sounds really nice, Aaron, she finally replied. I'd love that. We chatted a bit about different cuisines, narrowed it down to a few spots, and decided on a time and place for me to pick her up. Everything felt like it was falling into place. I couldn't stop grinning. Then she surprised me. Aaron, would it be all right if I stayed over again tonight? After dinner? I'd invited Brandon and Erica to visit me several times, but their schedules were tight. It took another 3 weeks before they could make a weekend trip to Chicago. They booked a room at a stylish hotel downtown, and I got the chance to show them around, the lakeshore, the museums, even Wrigley Field. Saturday night, we were enjoying drinks at the Fairmont's bar, waiting for our dinner table. I found myself recounting the last few tense conversations I'd had with Samantha. Though they'd already heard most of it over the phone, reliving it together in person made the whole thing feel more vivid and oddly funny. That's when I felt a gentle hand rest on my shoulder. Turning around with a smile, I was met by the most mesmerizing green eyes I'd ever seen. I leaned in, gave Claire a light kiss, and said, Erica, Brandon, this is Claire Harlow. Claire, meet Erica and Brandon O'Connor. They exchanged warm greetings, and I helped her settle into her seat before ordering her a drink. Small talk flowed easily, but I noticed Brandon watching Claire with a quiet sense of awe. A few minutes later, while I was midway through a story, Brandon cut in, gesturing toward Claire. Aaron, you really landed on your feet, man. We all laughed, Erica most of all. She wasn't the type to feel threatened by another woman's beauty. She knew how much Brandon loved her, and Claire's looks didn't change that. As we strolled to the restaurant, the women a few steps ahead of us in conversation, Brandon leaned over and asked in a low voice, So, are you two actually together? I nodded. At this point, yeah, and honestly, I still can't wrap my head around it. But it's not just that she's stunning, she's genuine, thoughtful, incredibly giving. Brandon already knew some of what Claire had been through, how she too had been hurt by someone she trusted. Maybe that shared pain brought something good with it, he said. I'm starting to think it wasn't a tragedy after all, I replied. Just two people left behind by selfish partners, finding something real. Well, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. Whatever it was, I'm glad it happened. Looks like life's finally swinging your way. As we caught up with the women and took our seats, their laughter echoing through the dining room, I glanced at him and smiled. Yeah, I said. I'm living the dream, man. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.